Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Veg Networking Canada. We are a community where vegan plant-based companies connect and collaborate. It is important to honor, acknowledge, and respect that many of us are located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of many Indigenous peoples of Canada. Today, we have a special guest with us. He comes to us with an unwavering commitment to innovation and adaptability in the ever-evolving landscape of e-commerce, often associated with being a visionary trailblazer with a heightened degree of market foresight, a former athlete turned digital commerce entrepreneur. Veg Networking Canada is pleased to introduce the founder of PlantX. Welcome, Sean Dollinger.
Thanks for having me on, Justin. Really appreciate it.
And I think I said your last name wrong there, Sean Dollinger.
Yeah, we don't want to get it confused with Dillinger, but yeah.
So, Sean, can you tell everybody listening who's with us live? And then, of course, Veg Networking Canada is a group for business owners and entrepreneurs. So they're busy and they watch these on the replays. So, can you tell everybody listening what led you to go plant-based and what that means to you?
Yeah, first off, thanks for your time for listening in today. The world I think is harder than ever right now as far as not even just the vegan plant-based space, but just business in general. So anytime I'm very thankful for. I been an entrepreneur at heart since, probably 12 years old, which I'll get into a little bit more later. I had a successful exit in 2019, and I kind of thought, how could I change the world? How could I help people? How could I do something that's more meaningful? And I had been living a plant-based journey for 10 plus years, lost about 60 pounds in all. And what I explain to people, it's not even the physical difference, but the mental difference. I used to drive myself to the emergency room multiple times a week thinking I was going to die. That's how unhealthy I was. That's how mentally broken down I was. And when I started living this plant-based journey and this lifestyle, and I can't tell you how many diets I went on from, probably the age of 14 up, but then this kind of connected with me, this whole plant-based journey. And the reason why I started PlantX, originally was because when I was living this plant-based lifestyle, people always judged me. I felt like, what do you mean you don't eat chicken? What do you mean you don't eat steak? And this was my journey, and how did it have any impact on anybody else? And I wanted to create an environment where people felt welcome, that if they just wanted to try to live plant-based for one meal a day, that's okay. We still love you. And if you're not 100% vegan, that's perfectly fine as well. And that's what we have done. And that's why I think, I don't know the exact number out there, but I think plant-based vegan, I'd say 80% of the businesses that when I came into this industry in the beginning of 2020 have actually closed. And even if you look at companies like Oatly, that have fallen 95% of their share price, and they do $1.5 billion a year. And if you look at the Beyonds of the world that have fell 90%, that's why we took a bit of a different approach to be more general, to welcome people to living a plant-based lifestyle. If you go into our food hall, which we have the largest vegan food hall in the world currently in Chicago, you won't see vegan, you won't see plant-based. Food is food. And we believe that people should be educated on why should they introduce more vegetables in their life, and really not push it on people, let people feel welcomed, because that's what I feel sells at the end of the day. And that's why I think that we keep succeeding. We went from 0 in revenue a few years ago to over 20 million in revenue. One of the big things I think in business is pivoting. So if you have an idea day one, the quicker you could pivot if it's not working out, the bigger chance you have to succeed at the end of the day. So, I think that's brings us to where we're at now. But Justin, if you had any questions on that, happy to answer.
Well, it's really interesting to hear about your story about like going through the emergency and everything like that. So did you, like, in terms of plant-based coming into your consciousness, did you find that on your own? Did you see something, read something? Did somebody introduce it to you? Like, how did you come to that awareness?
I think the biggest thing over the 10 plus years of this kind of journey of becoming fit and healthy and moving in the right direction is really not just finding one person to follow or one direction to follow. It's really listening and seeing if things make sense. So I like to be gluten free, but sometimes if you look at something that's gluten free, you start questioning, why am I putting these 30 ingredients into my body? And then when I've done further research, sourdough comes from a mother, and people don't realize it's a live culture, right? That's being put in, and every piece of authentic sourdough originates from somewhere, and there's so many health benefits to it. So even though I consider myself gluten free, over the last couple of years, I've adapted to maybe what would be the healthier choice rather than specifically sticking to something. One athlete that I think is one of the best athletes of all time is Tom Brady. He was able to quarterback and still win Super Bowls against 20-year-olds. I have a 17-year-old son that I wouldn't even like at 43 to go up against him, and just imagine these 25-year-old huge athletes. And his whole big thing was sugar, whatever sugar it is, that sugar's poison, and I believe that sugar is one of the biggest drugs in this world. Think about it. You take a little bit today, you want more to the next day, and it's just a constant downward spiral. And there's really no health benefit to it. So, I cut out sugar, probably 5 years ago, and then I felt I got to another level. And same thing with plant-based living. I'm not a fan of all the crazy products that are out there, but I am a fan of, I keep telling people, when you go to some of these plant-based restaurants, the flavors, the uniqueness, it introduces people to a whole new palette by pushing these amazing chefs and cooks to a next level, and that's what I'm really excited about. Like in Vegan Food Hall, one thing that blows me away all the time, there's a Mexican restaurant that opened up, and they created a ceviche made out of, I believe it's cauliflower, and the texture is incredible and the flavors are unbelievable. And to me, I'm like, why do you need to eat anything but that? So that's really what I love about the space, and keep trying to introduce people and get excited about it.
Well, I think a lot of people are probably salivating a little bit just thinking about that ceviche because I know I am. And it's interesting that you mentioned the sourdough and all of that. I know that we've had Ed and Natasha Patton from Bread on before, and they just launched their sourdough baking book. And yeah, that's a whole nother community that I'm sure some ears perked up when you were talking about that. But in terms of your entrepreneurial origin and spark, you mentioned an exit. I think you said 2019. But where did Sean become an entrepreneur? Was it as a child? Did you grow up in an entrepreneurial family? How did that begin for you?
Yeah, before we jump into that, Bread is my favorite spot on the weekends. I head down with the kids and pick out their incredible cinnamon buns and all those things for the kids. It's an amazing treat, and they've really done wonders with their whole plant-based bakery. I'd love to have them in the food hall, and we even discussed doing some things in Squamish with them. But they're great at what they do. As far as it all started, and I tilt my hat to my son. He's at 12 years old. I still remember I got a phone call from the bank saying, John, why are you laundering money through your son's bank account? I go, sorry, what are you talking about? They're like, he's running $50,000 to $100,000 a month through his student account, and we've never seen this before. This is the banker. And I say, no, he's got a shoe business, and the shoes were on fire, especially during the pandemic. And, he's outperforming me as a young entrepreneur because I turned to him and I convinced him to finally get a job for a little bit, because I feel when you start a job, you learn a lot of aspects that are really important, especially when you have employees down the line, when you're leading the business, when you're working for someone, you kind of have to learn, like, hey, I'm doing things that I don't necessarily like. And he's like, Dad, why would I need to do something like that? So I keep trying to go through that lesson with him, but I did everything from selling vacuums at Electrolux. I could tell you almost anything about an Electrolux vacuum. to being a courier before smartphones were around, which the guys thought I was crazy. I was like one of the youngest people to work there, and a delivery that should have taken 15 minutes took me 3 hours because I couldn't even read a map properly. If I had GPS back then, I probably would have stuck with it because the money was pretty good. But all of these kind of random jobs then led me to start my first delivery job, actually, which was what would be known as Uber today. I had the first one like that in Montreal. So before smartphones existed, I had 15 drivers on the road, mostly students, and we would do pickup and deliveries from restaurants that didn't have delivery yet. We had people call us to go to the convenience store. I even had a call with Costco to lead their kind of delivery program, etc. And one thing I tell entrepreneurs and people starting out, for me, my biggest problem, and I don't know if it led to success or I could have been more successful if I stuck with kind of what I tell people, is you started a business for a reason, you believed enough in it. And instead of moving on to the next thing because it gets hard, and every business gets hard, no matter if I built $1.5 billion business, my plant-based business was worth 250 million. When we came out of the gate, we raised $42 million. You would think all these things make it easy or easier, but it's not. It's just not the case. You always go to challenges. You don't grow as quickly as you once hoped. When you start a business, you get a phone number. Wow, that's exciting. You set up a voicemail, you get business cards, you get a website. Everything happens so quickly in real time that you feel the progress, you feel the growth immediately. But then all of a sudden, you're starting to wait for these calls to come in or get customers or provide services. And, one, you might have been happy with day one, but now by day 10, you want multiple calls a day. So, my problem is I was making over $100,000 doing this delivery job, which was a lot of fun. Anything I've done in my life, that's one thing. I've always had fun with it. And, as far as grinding it out, like sticking with it, because I always saw that, oh man, the most I'll ever make maybe a year is $1 million. And I wasn't satisfied with that. While if I had stuck with my delivery job, maybe that would have become Uber, or maybe I would have built it big enough to have a multi-$100 million exit, like some of these other ones that came way after me. Like, I forget what we have here in Canada. Um, Oh man, I'm drawing a blank. Anyways, a lot of these smaller companies that were smaller than myself ended up getting really big paydays, especially when Uber tried getting growth and DoorDash, etc. So, that's kind of the biggest lesson or the biggest thing that I try to preach is really stick to what you're doing, but being able to pivot in the vertical. So, when we started PlantX, and to go one step back, just to answer Justin's question a little bit better, after kind of that first job, and as computers developed, e-com developed, really for 20 plus years for me, it's been e-commerce businesses. So whether I've been in technology, fashion, I built the third largest cannabis company in the world. No matter what it was, it's always got a lot to do with e-coms, so like in the cannabis space, I wasn't growing. I didn't believe in the growing aspect. I actually sold vaporizers online, hardware. And we then launched in Australia and throughout the world to become one of the leading vaporizer companies in the world. So, that's the angle we take. So for PlantX, we bought the oldest vegan domain name that ever existed, which is veganessentials.com. And we bought it out actually of receivership for pennies on the dollar. And people keep saying to me, in the different industries I go, because we did this in the cannabis industry as well, where we owned the oldest domain that ever existed in that one as well. But we came into the game so much later than everybody else, and that's our way of pivoting. So, we started with the Bay. We started going into their stores, but the Bay is a tough brand here in Canada. As we know, brick and mortar, it's dying. They got to become innovative. So we join them to try to bring that innovation, but it was very, very hard. So for us to keep losing money in some of these verticals, we have enough things to fall back on to be able to pivot in and concentrate on what works in the space that we entered into. So we also bought a juice company. Some Montrealers, maybe you guys know Cassandra and Andrew Walker. Andrew Walker is the face of the Hallmark Channel. So pretty much all the Hallmark movies that you see, he's the main person in them. Super great people. They built a juice company after their son Wes. It's called Little West. And when we started with them, they were doing, $1 million, 2 million a year. We've built the brand up to now 5 million. We're in 500 Whole Foods throughout the US, and the brand just keeps growing and growing and growing. So yeah, that's as far as kind of where I started, then PlantX, and then I get a lot of people, who come to us, and I think at 43 years old, it is so hard to do startups. So, whenever somebody tells me they're doing a startup, I really kind of, give them a big salute, because it's not easy, especially in the environment that we are in today. And I don't know if I have what it takes to start another startup, So, but basically, what I've pivoted to now is I have companies that the best story recently is Shelby and Leah. They live over in Alberta, and they started a lash company. Lashes are really hot for ladies right now. And they had built it into a beautiful business, just the two of them. And then they contact me. I come in, we take a bit of an equity position. We're not looking for hourly salaries or wages or anything like that. And then we help them get to that next level, and then hopefully work on an exit. So I've been having a lot of fun doing that. A big company out of Winnipeg that we just started with is called Tiber River Vegan Products. If you have a chance to look at them, they have over 100 different products, from laundry detergent to soap to all of that. That's our latest, I don't call them clients, latest, I guess, addition to the family, because I have a core group of 10 people that work with me. And then we, incubate these companies and help them get to the next level. Most recently, I took a company public on the NASDAQ literally 2 months ago. I started the company about 2 years ago in the alcohol space. It was just an idea, and we were able to take it from concept to fruition. Our market cap came out at over 60 million US. We've raised a little over 22 million US up to this point, I believe, somewhere around there. And the company's profitable, and it's a lot of fun. But again, even taking this company public, we started at $7.25. Today, we're down to about 2 pennies. And, every time you think you might know something, you don't. And there's curveballs, and, anybody who says they know it all, they're lying, because, I'm learning every single day, and not just one lesson a day. I'm literally learning multiple things daily, and I love it, and love everything that I do and everything that we've grown. And I love everybody who works with us. We've never lost an employee due to them leaving. There's sometimes mutual where it's just not working out, and we kind of want them to leave, but feel bad, cutting them. There's been some of those situations. But as far as the team that I work with daily, that we have management calls daily, some of those members have been around for 10 years now, which, again, retention in 2023, 2024 to keep talented people is extremely tough. I employ a lot of people overseas. So our whole design team is actually out of the Philippines. Our whole programming tech team is out of Pakistan. And our whole back end accounting operations is out of India. So that's how we scale teams to support the businesses. So on our daily calls, there's 8 people. That's our core team. That's who joins every day. And then if we need to expand under them, we do a lot of expansion overseas. We have a SEO expert who's tremendous. Every single one of our sites, even if you guys go look at Plant Based Online, not only do we appear in the top space, but we appear two of our websites in the top three spaces. And that's across the board. Our SEO is off the chart. Yeah, instead of me rambling on and going on, if anybody has any questions at this point, would love to take any, or go in a different direction if any questions are asked.
Yeah, totally. I was at a TD Economics Summit a couple days ago, and yeah, one of my key takeaways was the increasing reliance in 2024 and beyond when it comes to attraction and retention in the private sector. So you're echoing that definitely. And so you mentioned a little bit, kind of in vain to this question here about, growing the family in these equity positions with different businesses to give them a boost. Specific to PlantX though, where's PlantX going in the future? I think we're correct in that Chicago is fairly new or recent, right? And then like where's PlantX going in the future?
Yeah, and I just want to make sure, because you broke up a bit, Justin, you guys could hear me perfectly.
Yes.
Okay, great. So again, back with the pivot. So, our stock was super beat up here in Canada, just like every other micro cap company. I've invested in lithium to, I don't know, anything you can imagine off the, across the board, and down literally 90%. So we met a bank who came up with a very interesting pivot to generate wealth for our shareholders who've been extremely beat up, is to take kind of the assets, roll them into a Cayman Co, and then do an F1 listing on the NASDAQ. So we started working on that process. It hasn't been easy. It's been about a year of going at it, but it's allowed us to be able to get some capital to be able to launch like the vegan food hall. One of the reasons why the vegan food hall, I believe, is successful at this point. We teamed up with 6 local restaurants, so they already had a following, and we made sure to be super selective on the 6 restaurants we brought in because we wanted to make sure they had a great reputation. I always believe in 1 + 1 = 11. So just imagine 6 different companies coming in and helping. Then we also have our grocery store, which acts as the front to be able to do e-com off of. So basically, we're not just putting inventory in a store, and if it doesn't sell, it goes in the garbage. We're able to then use PlantX and Vegan Essentials to move all of that product. As well, we have a huge bar with 10 different partners in the bar that we promote their products through as well. So I believe that in business today, you really need this full circle of being able to hedge your risk. Otherwise, I believe that everybody's in for a really uphill battle, and we even see that with our team, like I even say this going back to Method Lash. I won't get too much into the details on, if we're being paid or not, because it's very, very, very minimal what we collect each month. It's really towards the equity position. But if they had to go hire a full-time programmer, if they had to go hire a CFO, if they then had to go hire an SEO expert, you're speaking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that is essentially evaporating from your business, making it virtually impossible to break even. And as time's gone on and people have approached me, whether they do 10 million a year, 20 million a year, you start going through the balance sheet and it's amazing how much everybody struggles. There's very few businesses out there that, just spin off cash. Very, like, I don't even know the number. It's got to be under 1%. I'd be shocked if it's more, even restaurant business at $22 an hour now for staff. We have a very successful, I've met Sandra a couple times out at the X Market in Squamish, and that's a really successful place. The numbers are huge. But if we make 5% to the bottom line a year, that's record breaking, and no matter how hard you try and no matter how much you roll your sleeves up, it's very, very difficult. So one thing that I found is if you could create more verticals to bring in the revenue with the same amount of staff, and I'd prefer to give the staff more money than bring on more people, so that they do well and that we retain them and keep them and give them the bonuses. Like just recently, we started a run club in Chicago. Somebody offered to do it $100 a week for us. But then I turned to one of the employees who's in phenomenal shape. I said, would you like to do the run club? And here's your incentives per week. And he was lit up. He was so happy, and he's been having an absolute blast with it. And he gets compensated a few extra dollars a week. And at least it's going into somebody's pocket who I care about and who's part of the family, you know? So we've been doing a lot of that recently.
Yeah. Now, in addition to what you mentioned, because that's kind of like a transformation or trend that you're spotting in your industry, in that like increasing verticals and stuff like that. Are there any other transformations or trends that you're spotting in your industry?
Yeah, like as plant-based as a whole, it's extremely difficult. As I said at the start of this conversation, I can't tell you how many companies have gone out of business. You know, just the other day, one of the biggest brands that we work with, and I'm definitely not going to mention their names, by mistake, somebody thought we owned them, and I got a collection bill for them. And I was in shock. I'm like, oh my God, if this company is getting collections on them, I'm like, that is super scary, you know? And it's funny, you know, you see these brands and you think, wow, they're selling so many. How could they not make money? And I even see it in our juice company. Our juice company, like I said, $5 million a year now. We have 3 people running it, just 3 individuals running it. And we are just breaking even, literally just breaking even. And we're supporting with our other team as far as design goes, programming goes. I think I've learned a lot over the last, 30 years in business, and it's still virtually almost impossible for us to make money. Like, and that's in that vertical of juice, which people reach to, So it's and I don't want to be a bearer of bad news here, because I know everybody's working hard, but I want to be realistic and not paint a picture. It's very easy for people to come on here and act all rosy and, oh, we're doing 5 million, we're making money, blah blah. It's kind of like those gamblers, really bad gamblers. They'll only tell you about their wins, never about their losses, and paint this picture that gambling is good. So the only thing that I haven't done through the years, which it's going to be interesting because I'm doing it, I'm in year 4. Normally I jump ship, kind of what I started this conversation by saying with my delivery company. It was good, but then I thought, oh man, I could make millions doing this. And then I jumped to that, and then millions to this. And, again, it's worked out for me. Like I said, super successful, built company from my garage to $1.5 billion in literally a year and a half. But it doesn't mean because the market cap was healthy that the business was spinning off cash, because we kept trying to grow that business and it kept losing money. So, it'll be interesting here where we've kind of clutched our cleats in. We're a dedicated bunch. And if we could, and I believe we'll succeed in the plant-based space, but if we could do it when literally everyone else is having a really rough time, that's going to be something that we could all be really proud of at the end of the day, and keep doing what our original vision was, which was to educate, teach, and make people feel like they have a safe place to come shop and not be judged, and to, give other companies a chance to succeed.
There's your old athlete coming out, and you clutch your cleats in.
Exactly. A lot of baseball
So,
terms.
in terms of giving back or charity, maybe you're wanting to answer this as Sean Dollinger, or maybe PlantX has some type of give back strategy, but that's the next question for you. In terms of giving back or charity, like clearly you're giving back to the world and people by focusing in the plant-based space, but what does charity or giving back mean to you or PlantX?
So I've been torn with that question, and it's funny you bring up, oh, well, we started PlantX and it gives back. And, that is my true belief. When I started out, it was really about that. I feel I haven't touched enough lives still with that. Like I originally started telling people my way of giving back is if I could teach people how to live a healthier life, not necessarily just vegan or plant-based, but kind of the journey I went through. And man, if I could just help 2 people or even one person to go from where I was once in my life to where I am now, I think that would be rewarding in itself, because I think everybody should be able to enjoy the planet, and enjoy life and all of these things. But, as time's gone on, I definitely want to make a difference. And, like things that I feel still don't have a huge impact, like there was a St. Jude's event, I believe I've got 4 children, so I wanted to support, children's research. And for X dollars, does it really have an impact on everything in the world? And are you really changing it? And I'm still struggling a lot with that. I think that in the future, I could do a lot more. But, to answer your question, like during the holidays, we'll give a few percent of the revenue away. When I started a taco place, I started a taco restaurant in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We launched this whole campaign, Uno for Uno. Somebody bought a taco in Winnipeg, we fed a person in Mexico. And then people would backlash, why are you helping people in Mexico instead of helping people in Canada? So it's been a really big struggle of mine, and I don't think I have a really clear picture just yet. So we'll revisit that in the future. But we definitely do our part in supporting. But again, I don't think it's ever enough.
Yeah, no, you're right. We've had plenty of people basically say, it's never enough, and the it's a great conversation to have, and there's no right or wrong answers, just like any of these conversation starters or questions. So the next one for you, maybe you can speak to this either from your own personal journey that you've kind of touched on a little bit in relation to health, and or maybe as it relates to entrepreneurship and business. And we're basically trying to extract resources that have worked for you, that somebody listening, that it might work for them, whether that's books, podcasts, websites, documentaries, apps on your phone, whether it's related to leadership, money management, health, who knows? But that's like a big question. But we're just trying to get any resources that have worked for you out to those people who are listening.
So I know it's going to sound uh, crazy, maybe a little embarrassing from my side. I think the last book I've ever read in my life was The Hardy Boys. I was 13 years old, and it's interesting growing up, and I only found this out later in my life. I had quite a lot of learning disabilities, and my mom never told me. And she argued with the school and kept me mainstream throughout my whole education. I ended up graduating high school in honors, got a baseball scholarship, and all of that type of good stuff. But I have a lot of problems. Like I can't remember people's names. I'd have a really tough time, remembering anybody's name, even from this call, maybe besides, Justin, and I would relate you to like a cousin, that's the way kind of my mind works. Then somebody told me, oh, go to audiobooks. I have trouble closing my mind down during the day. Those things put me to bed within minutes, literally minutes, so I struggle with all of that. I you know I I hear Yahoo is designed for somebody who's in like grade 6, and for me that's the most fun thing for me to go read is yahoo.com, that it's geared towards like somebody who's just graduating, and I'm like, well, that's kind of where I'm at. And I take fun facts, like people who speak to me, they think that they can have really good conversations, and they're like, how do you know that? How do you know that? And I'm like, Yahoo, at the end of the day. So I don't know if I'm the best person to kind of answer that, because I kind of go at my own beat, and I don't know necessarily it's right or wrong. Lately there's been a lot of articles on Warren Buffett. So then, like, that really interests me. I have a lot of respect for the most successful people in the world. I don't believe that it's a luck. I don't believe in that word. I believe hard work creates opportunity, which people might think is luck. I even say people who buy a lottery ticket, chances are they didn't just go in one time and that one time they won the lottery. Each one will tell you, well, I have a pattern, and there's all this thinking and effort that still goes into their scenario, and they created the opportunity to win the lottery for themselves. I can't win because I don't go and buy that ticket. So, maybe I would, right? And maybe I'd have a system that I think gives me a chance to winning. So, at the end of the day, I think it's really like Warren Buffett says you should invest in companies that you believe in, right? And here I am in a Tesla. I had the first one back in 2013. I should have left my money in Tesla, because it's a great company that I believe that I love their product even today, where I have a lot of choice and opportunity for different cars. I still go and choose a Tesla. Not to go against your audience, Justin, which maybe they would buy it just strictly for vegan, for the environment, etc. Even though I definitely believe in the environment, etc. But to be completely honest, once again, and that might be my flaw in life, is I buy it because I love the vehicle. I love the way it drives. I love every aspect of it. And I should have stuck more with that when investing. So whatever you really like in life, I think that would be a good place to always start and take kind of the advice from, like the founder of Starbucks, etc. Super, super brilliant gentleman, and Musk didn't only just start Tesla, but he started PayPal, again, another system that I use every single day in all of my businesses and all of these different things. So I think following kind of people who've done something incredible, which isn't easy, I think are my mentors, and I try to learn from them.
Yeah, and that's actually a nice little segue into the second last question for you, which is based around inspiration. We've had people in the past talk about organizations, individuals as inspiration. We've also had people talk about themselves, like humbly, not bragging or anything, but they themselves are their own source of inspiration. We've had people talk about nature and all of that. So when we say to you, Sean, what does inspiration mean to you? What comes to mind?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I used to go a lot more on what you kind of said. Myself, I really follow, etc. But when I really dig down and even seeing my kids, like my 15-year-old daughter just got COVID yesterday. She plays for a travel softball team. We were literally, it's a charity event, this indoor facility just outside Seattle. It's a 4.5 hour drive. She called me crying hysterically that she's not going to be able to go and she's letting her team down. And we were literally taking the seaplane out tomorrow at noon, landing in Seattle, and it was a tournament going through the night. So it started at midnight till 8 a.m., starts the next night, midnight till 8 a.m. And here she was super, super, she hasn't missed a day of school this year. She couldn't even get out of bed, and I see that. And that's me at the end of the day. That's kind of where I'm at. I haven't missed a day of work in my life. I literally haven't missed a single day, whether I worked for somebody or for myself. I suffer severely from gout. This year's been an extremely, extremely rough year for me. IVs hooked up. While the IV's in me, I'm working. That's just, I don't call it work. I tell a lot of people that, I call it life. And I grew up in a very different type of household, extremely different. And this is where, to now answer your question, Justin, where I'm at in my life, I grew up seeing two very different ways of life. I actually grew up in one of the wealthiest areas of Montreal, but I was the poorest house in that area. And the only reason we were able to afford to live in the area was due to my grandfather, who was super successful. But he bought the house for my parents so that the grandkids didn't have to essentially suffer or anything of that, but he didn't give them any more resources. So, growing up for the people in Montreal or Quebec, we'd run out of oil for the furnace, and that's not something that was regulated by the government because electricity is, but oil's not. So you could actually be cold in Quebec. And I can't tell you how many times we ran out of fuel, to be able to heat the house, And then when I went to college, I got a college scholarship, but my parents couldn't afford the extra. My mother ended up bouncing a check on the landlord, and I had to live out of a car for 2 weeks, eat macaroni and cheese, and all of these different things. And then I saw my grandfather, who lived in one of the nicest homes in Montreal and all these things, but he wouldn't give. It was a very interesting way of guiding me, teaching me that, hey, the good life is the good life, but you got to work hard to still get to that good life, and I think seeing that, and then on the other spectrum, my stepfather, who never legally adopted me, but from zero, from two was in my life, he was the total opposite. He was an incredible father, like as far as driving us, being by our side, always being around no matter what you needed, but he couldn't care about making money. So you saw these two spectrums, and I feel very fortunate and lucky that I got to kind of live these two lives that allowed me to inspire me to be like my grandfather, to go out there, because that's the life that I really wanted. That's the life that I wanted to succeed and go for. But my father, taught me a lot of important things about how to be there for the family and to, yeah, that's, so
So
we're
your
at.
needless to say, your mind must have been absolutely blown when you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, because that's literally what you're describing. I don't know if you've read, well, based on what you've said, maybe you haven't read it yet, but anyways,
No, I haven't read it, but I've seen it. So recently there's been a lot of articles because I'm a big believer in Bitcoin. I started getting Bitcoin at $0. I used it on my one of my first websites, and I know he's a big believer in it. So I've seen his name come around a lot.
well, when and if you read it or audio book it or whatever, you're going to be like, this is exactly my stepdad and my grandpa. Like,
Seriously,
and
eh?
yeah, what you're describing. It's literally
Cool.
like to a T. Okay, so all of that said in this conversation, Sean, is the last point for you here is we've had people not enjoy the framing of the question in terms of advice. They say, like, well, who am I to give advice? But I'm happy to give any wisdom, tips, or lessons that have worked for me that might work for people listening. And you've already dropped a bunch, as naturally happens throughout the conversation. Like I'm taking paraphrasing for you, but like embrace the suck, grinding it out, pivot in the vertical. Like you've given some wisdom and tips. That in addition to that, if you want to drill down more, or is there any other wisdom, tips, lessons, or advice that you want to leave people with here before we say goodbye?
Yeah, again, I think this is also an evolving one. Before I would have just said, I would have ended with saying, just keep going, keep going, keep believing in what you've done. Speaking to a lot of really smart people, uh, listen, take advice, but make your own decisions at the end of the day, even kind of where I've been with my lifestyle and eating, even though, and I think somebody mentioned, I think they might have dropped off now, but about not no dairy specifically. I haven't had dairy in a long time or meat in a long time, and that just feels good with my body, and so it's not really just listening. It's really, we've all been born, and if you're an entrepreneur and you've started your own business, that takes a lot. You know, we take it a little bit for granted. I know I have. One thing that I've learned from speaking to people, and I know it might sound silly, is like people do have different mindsets. Like I'm super confident in what I do. And somebody once told me, the person I was speaking with, they say, a lot of people don't even have that. They're not confident to go do what they do or think that they're smart. When they said that to me, they don't think they're smart. I'm like, what do you mean? Everybody must think that they're smart at the end of the day, like, and so, it's really been over the last few years, instead of just going and going and going and going, taking the time maybe to do some more things like this and hearing people's kind of mindset and understanding where people come from and the challenges. But I still stick true to believe in yourself, because that's all you've got at the end of the day, and keep working hard. And it's a lot, especially now. I think when the pandemic hit, I thought that the world was in much bigger trouble, but then the governments are really good at what they do. They threw a couple $1 trillion into the industry, into the economy, and then that shoots up, and all these interesting things. So yeah, the best advice I could give is don't think that you know it all, and go out there, listen, pay attention, and pivot. If one thing's not working for long enough, That's what I've also realized in 2023, especially in the e-com world. Don't be sold on somebody saying something takes months or even a year, you know, things take off. So if it's not taking off right away, then pivot, because it's hard enough just to even grind it out when things do take off.
Thank you so much. We had one question come in from one of the community members here, and I don't know if it's going to be a long answer or a short answer. If you could first maybe give it in a little quick summarization, that'd be great. And the question for you is, for products that get listed on PlantX, what makes them get clicks and sales? Is it that people are already familiar with the brand? Have they taste tested these products in person?
Come on, that's like a 1 hour answer, Justin.
I know.
So again, we're platform, we're choice. So the more selection, the better. That's the way that we see it. The benefit to brands that people might not know about is that they come in for a vegan Kit Kat, which now we're the only company in the US to have a vegan Kit Kat. So we use that to drive traffic. And then let's say Sandra's book, we could then add on checkout for X dollars. And then every single checkout, which is hundreds a day, would get exposure to Sandra's book, for example, that maybe other people wouldn't know. So hopefully that answers it. So in case you have any more questions.
Yeah, that's maybe when people share this episode on LinkedIn or something, maybe that we can drive more conversation there at a deeper level on that question. Because you're right, that is totally a full 1 hour masterclass on how do things get clicks and sales on ecom. All right, so Sean, thank you so much. Everybody, you can find out more online, plantx.ca, exactly how it sounds, plantx.ca. And on Instagram, it's at GoPlantX. This has been another great conversation here at Veg Networking Canada with another great entrepreneur, the founder of PlantX, Sean Dollinger. Thank you so much for your time. And for everybody listening today and in the future, thank you so much for your time as well. And we'll catch you soon on another episode. Take care. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.